So you are known for doing work organizing domestic workers, for running an organization that is trying to think about how to change elder care in this country. And when I looked at your Twitter bio preparing for this interview, I noticed that it said futurist. And I thought, that's interesting. I wonder why she calls herself a futurist. And then we were talking before our conversation here, and you were saying to me that these are going to be the single biggest job categories in the country if projections hold true. Can you talk a little bit about the scale of where these professions are going, how many people we're talking about, what role they play as a labor portion of the American economy?
Absolutely. One of the things that's less visible in everyday life in this country is a massive demographic shift that's underway. And it's not the demographic shift that we mostly hear about in particularly the political news cycle, which is about the racial demographic shift. But layered on top of the racial demographic shift is this generational demographic shift, where the baby boom generation is starting to turn 65 at a rate of a person every 8 seconds. Every day, 10,000 people turn 65. And then because of advances in healthcare and technology, people are living longer than ever before, like longer than we ever could have imagined when we put our safety net in place. So we're about to have the largest older population we've ever had, and really nothing in place to support people to live well as they live longer, which to me has a lot to do with care. And so that push is really driving a huge increase in the number of elder care jobs that are needed, particularly home care, as more and more people want to age at home and in their communities. So home care is now actually the fastest growing occupation in our entire workforce, the whole workforce, the fastest growing. And it's anticipated to grow at 5 times the rate of any other workforce. And a lot of the economists are projecting that by the year 2030, if you take childcare and elder care jobs combined, it's going to be the single largest occupation. To me, it's both a huge challenge and an opportunity. The challenge for me is that we're looking at jobs where, for example, the home care workforce, the annual median income for a home care worker is $13,000 per year. So people are working incredibly hard. These are the people that we're counting on to take care of the people who cared for us, like my grandmother. And they can't take care of their own families on this income, right? So it's completely unsustainable. The opportunity is that this is going to be one of the jobs that will anchor us in the future. It will anchor the economy, and it will anchor and make it possible for you and I to go to work knowing our loved ones are in good hands. And if we invest in these jobs, it could be really revolutionary for the rest of the economy.
I want to tell you a story here because this hits to one of these wounds that I carry. All reporters
Mm.
have these stories they've done where they reported on something and it went the wrong way. And this is one of mine. I did a piece on a Medicare pilot program a number of years back called Health Quality Partners. I found out about them because one of the folks I know who I trust most in healthcare called me and he said, there is this Medicare pilot program and they are getting better results than anything else anyone does. And Medicare is about to shut them down. And you have to go look at this. So they were in Pennsylvania and I went and looked at them. And they were a pilot program that was focusing on care for the absolute sickest people in Medicare, people who did not have a lot of money, who had a lot of comorbidity. They had many, many, many problems stacked on top of each other, early stage dementia mixed with terrible hypertension, mixed with this and that and the other thing. And
Mm.
they were getting these extraordinarily, highly, highly validated results. And the way they were doing it was they were just having people check up on the folks in the program all of the time. I mean, it's
Mm.
more than that. There was great management in the program, great people in the program. They were very evidence-based. But at the core of it, they were pushing care to these people and really trying to do these continuous holistic assessments in their home. Did there appear to be risks for falling or tripping? How was that working? What was happening with their partner, their spouse? Was their partner or spouse able to understand what was going on with their loved one's medications? I mean, it was really the most basic stuff, and it was working. And the program got shut down ultimately. My article got it a reprieve. It got another 18 months, and then it got shut down. And I
Mm.
remember we titled the piece, "If this was a pill, you would pay anything to get it," because there's
Mm.
just absolutely no doubt that if there had been a terribly invasive surgery that cost exactly as much money or twice as much money or 3 times as much money, but showed half the results, Medicare would be paying for it for everyone. And we just seem to have in our healthcare system broadly, but particularly in Medicare, no real sense of how to pay for something that is not an in-hospital or in a pill bottle medical intervention. And it's strange because there's no one you talk to in the healthcare system where that is their view of how health works. Nobody views it that way. But the way the payment is structured, the way the program is structured, what you said at the beginning of your comment to me, that we don't know how to get beyond the medicalization of people's health. It's really, really profoundly true. And it's true even when we're sitting there staring better ways to do it in the face. And it's one of these things where I've never been able to come up with an answer of how we can have this system where everybody knows what we're doing is wrong and nobody quite seems able to figure out a different way.
Mm. Yeah, we've totally lost the care part of healthcare.
Hmm.
I think that's absolutely right. And when I think about the work that home care workers do every single day, at its best, what it really fundamentally comes down to is upholding the human dignity of another person. That what you're doing every single day is connecting with the human being that is in your care, and you're doing everything necessary so that that person can have a dignified quality of life for as long as possible. That's actually very hard work. And we have not figured out a way to value it. But the trick is that in the 21st century, when that is becoming such a huge share of the work that's needed in order for this economy and our families to function properly, we have to figure out a way to value it. And I think that is the future. When we can figure out how we revalue the care part of our health, the health of our families, the health of our economy, that's when we're actually going to be on to the fundamentals of a sustainable society.
I'd like to talk about that word dignity for a minute because it seems to me to be a very widely held again and completely undervalued part of our system, of our lives, of our vision here. Don Berwick, who was for a period of time CMS administrator, he had this speech that was very famous where he said that the thing he was afraid of about getting sick wasn't the getting sick part, and it wasn't the part where he had treatments and surgeries and medications. It was a part where he lost his own humanity, where he got treated
Mhm.
as a patient, where he got treated as a problem to be solved. And I think we all understand for ourselves, for our loved ones, for the people around us, that of the things you might value as you get older, at any point in your life, really, but in this conversation, as you get older, holding on to your dignity to some degree of your autonomy is really high. And yet, that's
That's
another
right.
thing that we don't in any way measure. We don't reimburse
Mm.
for. We will pay a drug company or a medical device company or a hospital anything for a treatment that in any way shows any kind of improvement on sort of narrowly understood health outcomes, or even frankly, half the time doesn't. But anything that shows any kind of medicalized improvement, right? If you can show that this reduces chronic pain by 7%, like you get that gets reimbursed. And if you can show that this way of delivering care improves people's feeling of dignity and control over their own life by 50%, by 75%, it doesn't even exist. There's no way to even have the conversation. How do you change that? Because this is another one of these places where I don't think anybody doesn't want it to change. Just nobody's changed it.
So the way our country thinks about aging and dying, and this kind of culture, this dominant culture of kind of fear of death and dying, and then kind of an association of aging with disability, decline, frailty. I think that there's a way in which that prevents us from having a really healthy approach to people's agency and dignity throughout every stage of life. So for example, if you think about the fact that living longer is actually longer to love, to learn, to teach, to contribute. I mean, living longer is more time to do all the things that make life worth living if we have the right supports in place. If we could actually think about aging and preparing for aging and end of life in a way that was about what do we need to live well and have agency and dignity at every stage of life, and how do we value the supports and the people that will make that possible, the work that will make that possible, the systems that will make that possible, the policies, the infrastructure. We almost have to really kind of reorient our whole attitude around the later years of life. And if we're able to do that, so much human potential can be unlocked.
You have in this country a political coalition centered around older Americans that has become extremely anti immigrant. And yet there is no group, and I don't in any way want to be glib about this, that arguably benefits as much from having a healthy immigrant workforce than older Americans. I mean, as I look at the numbers of what is coming, of where we are now, it seems to me that the alternative to having quite a few immigrants in this country is nursing homes. It's fewer and fewer people being able to age and live out their final years and months at home. And yet
Mhm.
there doesn't seem to me to be any sense of that connection of the benefit to both sides, that there is some kind of cultural enmity that is overwhelming what is a very deep need and, as you put it, interdependency.
Mhm. It's true. It really is. I think if we can start to shine a light on this reality, I think it could be one of the things that helps to change the conversation about immigration. Um, in some ways, the state of Arizona is a canary in the mine for us. We often talk about the changing demographics in terms of race, but when you layer on top of it the changing demographics generationally, you actually see that the older population is significantly whiter, and the younger population is significantly more diverse and of color. And Arizona is the state in the country that is the most racially and generationally polarized of any state in the country, meaning they're the most white people over the age of 65 and the most young people of color under the age of 18. And it's no accident in that context of racial and generational polarization that Arizona was the birthplace of the notorious anti-immigrant legislation, SB 1070, the place where Sheriff Joe Arpaio rose to power, who, basically was indicted for torturing immigrants in detention in the facilities that he ran and racial profiling in Arizona. Also, the first and only pardon of the Trump administration, right? In some ways, we are, Arizona is helping us forecast if we don't find a way to put forward a vision of the future of this country that really unites us across race, class, and generation, where everyone can see their future and their interests inside of that vision. We do run the risk of increasing levels of racial and generational polarization, which is a really toxic breeding ground for hateful policy and hateful leadership. And so I think there's a ton at stake here, and a way that talking about care and caregiving can bring us together in the most important and urgent context for that kind of a unifying vision.